So just wanted to welcome everyone the last day of SEL Week of 2025. We are just, so many of you have been able to join us throughout this week of celebrating all the great work you're doing all of the time. And as SEL4NJ, we're just been, really just delighted to be able to offer you such expertise and resources from our partners from around the state all week. We have had 9 webinars. This is our 9 total. This is the 8th. So um, we're kind of excited about the whole collection of them. And just to remind everyone, I just have a few slides to let you know about SEL Day and SEL Week. So some of you have been joining us throughout the week, so you should be able to do this little bit as much as better than I can at this point. So just to let you know that this year we changed things up for SEL Day a little bit. SEL Day was on Monday, which kicked off SEL Week. And SEL Day/Week is brought to you by a couple of partners who've been working together for a couple of years now. An amazing colleague at the Urban Assembly, Dave Adams, kind of cooked up the idea, and very quickly SEL4US and the Urban Assembly joined together to launch the idea of SEL Day, which was to celebrate and highlight the great work that's being done in your schools all the time. 2 years ago, 6 Seconds, a wonderful organization with tons of resources, joined in as the international partner. And these three have been bringing SEL Day not only to the United States, but to the entire world. And so it's very exciting to have so many countries, so many, I believe every state in the Union in the United States has been participating, and I believe 70 countries, which is really quite amazing. We're still counting, so there's still time for those numbers to change. Just to let you know, SEL4NJ is a state alliance, and we're part of SEL4US, which is a nationwide alliance of different state groups who are all focused on promoting best practice SEL. And as you can see, some of those, there's actually more states than are represented in this little map, but it's from north to south, from coast to coast. And every state has gathered together, the most amazing advocates for SEL, experts, people who've been working in the field for years. And so it's a wonderful network where we can learn from one another. And so we in SEL4NJ are constantly learning from our colleagues. And likewise, we hope we can share some of the great stuff that New Jersey has been working on for many years. We're very fortunate in New Jersey that there's been, many, many years of focus on high quality SEL. And it's great to be able to share that. So SEL4NJ was formally formed in 2018. We were one of the very first founding members of SEL4US. However, the group itself has been meeting since 2011, just under a different name. So strong legs in this space. And one thing to mention is we don't like silos, and we're very proud of the fact that J is an organization with 4 distinct pillars: educators, people working directly in schools and districts, as well as those key educational associations and organizations from the smallest to the biggest. SEL providers, very broadly defined, and community partners. So we bring all of those disparate voices together, and all have a vested interest in seeing our kids thrive in our schools in New Jersey. So we are a volunteer organization, and we're just ever, ever, ever grateful for all of the time and expertise that the members of SEL4NJ and the leadership team bring to the table. So we basically want to raise awareness for high quality SEL. We want to connect people who are doing the work, who want to learn more about the work. And we help schools kind of cut through the noise, figure out the ways that they can, really tangibly and efficiently make the biggest difference. And one of the reasons is by bringing all these webinars to you. And these are, of course, for free, and they will be available on our website. So we do, for the purposes of SEL4NJ, we do define SEL very broadly. Again, this idea of creating an umbrella where so much of this good work can live. It's very important. And SEL Day, this is the last, I think I'm running out of time to make this message because we're on day 5. The idea is to really celebrate the great work that you're doing all the time. And it's kind of just a focus in time to share it and celebrate it and get everyone doing it at the same moment. So if you have an artifact, video, photo, just share it on social media, hashtag SEL Day, hashtag SEL4NJ, and we can like and share it. And this is some data details from last year. What's really wonderful about New Jersey is that we have all the great work that's being done on the ground, but also their support at some very high levels. On Monday, the governor issued a proclamation proclaiming SEL Day. On Wednesday, the State Board of Ed issued a resolution recognizing SEL Week. And the New Jersey Department of Ed for many years has been a strong, strong advocate for SEL. So as New Jersey, we have a great foundation that's, been really years in the making. So it's just great to celebrate it with all of you. So that said, I am done. And I am going to turn this over to Patrick. And we are just thrilled that Patrick Fennell is to join us today. Patrick he'll tell you about himself, but founder of Empowerment Solutions. He has been involved with the School Culture and Climate Initiative before it was the School Culture and Climate Initiative. He's involved with SEL4NJ and also with the Academy for Social Emotional Learning in Schools. So Patrick is a busy guy and he is a wonderful, wonderful colleague, and he is just fabulous at sharing just incredibly important messages. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to you, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate it. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to our presentation today on developing a mindset of hope and perseverance.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you're able to join us in this last specific last day of SEL week. But hopefully we are living SEL every single day. So what I want to do is I want to share my screen, and then we're going to just kind of jump right into what we have for today. Let me just move one thing. And perfect. All right. So as we just kind of jump into what we have today, again, as Liz said, I am Patrick Fennell, founder of Empowerment Solutions, where I work with different schools, with teachers, counselors, students, parents, really just kind of bringing all stakeholders together to kind of turn potential into reality. And then I have a second organization that I started, which is Empowerment Institute, which is a nonprofit which focuses on mentoring and parent engagement. So ultimately, my goal, my mission is what I would call an ABCD principle. So the A stands for attitude, awareness, and accountability. Once we're aware of our own attitude and accountable for ourselves, it leads to the BC, which is making better choices. We all have choices to make every single day. The students that we work with have to make choices every single day. When we make the best ones possible, it leads to the D, which is our destiny, the plan and the purpose for our lives. And so as we kind of jump into our conversation today, I want it to be a little bit interactive. So there'll be times where I'm going to ask you to put some things in the chat so that we can kind of continue this conversation back and forth as we kind of look at a few things that I want to focus on. The first one would be hope and perseverance. I just want to define those really quickly so that we can be on the same page. Then I want to kind of transition a little bit into the impact of hope and perseverance. Why are we even talking about this? How does it impact us in a positive way? Next would just be a couple things to be mindful of, the kind of foundational pieces that sometimes hinder hope and perseverance. So we want to kind of discuss those for a moment. And then what does hope and perseverance look like in the classroom? So if we know that these things are important, what is it that it looks like so that we can be aware of it so that we can then move into best practices? So what are some things that we can do not only for students, but also for ourselves? And I say also for ourselves because I guess in the place of total transparency, I think that we're in a time of uncertainty, a time of fear, and for some of us, even a sense of powerlessness. And I have been challenged personally by all those things as well. And so I started to kind of think about what are some real tools, what can we actually do to be able to move past that? And so this is what I want to talk about today. So we start off with defining hope and perseverance. All right, so if we think about hope, just in the chat really quickly, how would you define hope? What does hope look like to you? Or yeah, we'll just call it that. Stop sharing for 1 second. I have something stuck. Let me just move this real quick, and then I'm going to bring it all back.
Patrick, can you see the responses in the chat?
That's why I need to kind of bring it out and pull it back in because
Want us to read it to you?
my chat is stuck. Actually, that would be awesome if you could for right now.
Sure. So Bill Trusheim shares a positive outlook for the future. Seema, belief in your own abilities to change circumstances. Allison, hope is positivity, future plans and goals. Leah, feeling optimistic and expectations of positive outcomes.
Fantastic. That works. All right, now I'm going to bring it back in. I apologize. Okay.
Believing things are possible. Alicia.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Trish.
You're welcome.
All right, cool. I got it. All right, so all those things, most definitely true, right? So starting off with the belief that your future can be better than your past or the present condition or situation. It is a mindset, right? And I think that's kind of part of what the title of this is that it's a mindset. It's about how we think and what we believe. So it's a mindset that's characterized by two things, by optimism and a confident expectation. And so it's about managing those expectations that becomes a major part of what hope is for us. A desire for something, but it's not just a desire for something, it's also paired with a belief. And that belief is that it can and will happen. We also know that hope can motivate us by giving us something to hold on to or look forward to. And we kind of think about that from a sense of the placebo research, where some are given an actual medicine while others are given something that has no medicine at all. But part of what we find is that when I think and believe that I'm receiving something that can help, it actually helps patients to be able to maintain things that are controlled by the brain, right? Which are things like pain management, things like that. But it's not just the belief, but people that were receiving placebos also went to the doctor regularly. They were examined regularly. They were given things regularly. So it's really that combination of a belief, but also continuing to do the work that give us hope. Last one is that ultimately it's a driving force for action, right? So when we think about action, hope is good, but without action, hope ends up taking us nowhere. And so we also connect that with perseverance, right? So if we think about perseverance, we can kind of throw some thoughts in the chat as well. How would you define perseverance? All right, so Alicia says not giving up. Absolutely. Thoughts do we have as far as what perseverance looks like? Pro-social agency. I love that, Dr. Elias, that we connect with each other in pro-social ways, and then I'm able to make decisions that actually benefit me. Seema says motivation to continue reaching goals. Absolutely. All right, so if we kind of take a look, I add to some things that are being said, Lisa, doing something despite the difficulty. So everything that I really wanted to say about it, right? The ability to keep going, things get tough. Staying with the task even when it's difficult. The ability to persist and continue to work toward a goal despite the challenges, the obstacles, the setbacks. Also recognizing that I'm not going to quit even if I fail, and that true failure is only when I completely give up. and giving my best in spite of the circumstances. Now, my question really is, when we think about the understanding of what hope is and what perseverance is, how are the two connected? Right. And so when we think about how they're connected, hope is the source and the motivator of perseverance, right? We recognize that without hope, hope is the thing that gives me the purpose that I need to try and continue to move forward, even when things aren't going well. And it kind of represents my willingness to be able to move forward as well. Hope also helps us to maintain a positive outlook and see the potential for achievement and working towards things in spite of setbacks. Perseverance connects to hope in the sense that perseverance is essential to turning hope into reality. If I have hope, but I don't put forth the effort, even when things get difficult, my hope can only take me but for so far. Having that mindset of perseverance strengthens our hope for future success, and that ultimately hope and perseverance are skills. And because they're skills, they can be learned and they can be sustained. And so if we kind of move forward in that vein, there is an impact of hope and perseverance. The impact of hope and perseverance, research shows that hopeful people live longer. Right, so for a variety of different reasons, lower blood pressure, less anxiety, lower rates of depression, better sleep quality, just a few examples of how we live better when we have, and longer when we have hope. Hopeful children perform better academically and athletically. Right? It is that hope that leads to the perseverance that has them to perform better overall. We're less likely to suffer from depression or anxiety, an increase of creativity and engaged learning, where I'm more creative when I have hope. I'm more engaged when I have hope, and I'm willing to persevere when I have those things as well. And that perseverance also builds two things that we truly need to be successful in life. One of those is patience, right? Because we know that even when I have a plan laid out, it doesn't always move according to plan, and that it deepens relationships. And it's the relationships, the quality of the relationships that we have that dictate our performance and how we move through life in a positive way. And then finally, perseverance yields a greater sense of accomplishment. Um, if I don't put in the time and the perseverance and the effort, I'm less likely to feel like I've accomplished something. But when I do those things and I overcome and then I achieve the success, it leads me to feeling good about what I've been able to do. So if we kind of move into, I think it's important for us that if we're going to talk about how do we teach and support that mindset of hope, I think it's important for us to also recognize, well, how hopeful or optimistic are we? And so I think it always starts with ourselves first, and then looking at how we can support others. So what I've done is that I'm going to give you this life orientation test, which is a part of the positive psychology website. Provides the opportunity for you to use the same exact test if you want to. So there are actually 12 questions. So I would encourage you now, I'm going to give you 6 on the first page, 6 on the second page, just to kind of get an idea of where do you stand as far as optimism right now. Right, so this is, it's on a Likert scale. So a 0 from strongly disagree to all the way to a 4 that you strongly agree with this, with the statement as it pertains to you. So I'll give you a minute or so to kind of look at the first 6, rate yourself from 0 to 4 for each one, and then we'll move on to the second page, and then I'll give you, I guess, how you analyze it, what those numbers look like, so that you can see where you currently stand. I don't want you to think long and hard about each one. If you think long, you think wrong. Don't overanalyze it. Just look at it, answer it really quickly, and we'll move on to the next one. About maybe another 30 seconds, and we'll move on to page number 2. Right, so now we're going to move on to page number 2, which will be 7 through 12. Give you another, say another 60 seconds or so to finish up your second piece, and then we'll talk about how do we analyze this to see where you stand. Ready. Okay, so we should be finished at this particular point with all 12. So what I'm going to do is just talk about how we analyze those results. So a 0 to 13 on your assessment would be low optimism, and also high pessimism, right? 14 through 18 is moderate optimism, and anything from a 19 to a 24 is high optimism and low pessimism. And so you can kind of see where you stand right now. I wanted you to be able to do a little self-reflection, because I think that's an important part of being able to, if I'm going to increase or build and develop that mindset of optimism, I need to know who I am so that I can move forward with it. And I also wanted to make a note, as Liz had talked earlier, I am one of the consultants at the School Culture and Climate Initiative. And part of the survey that we talk about is about measuring student optimism. And it's important to recognize where they stand, how they see things, what they believe. A lot of those questions have to do with looking at the future, graduating high school, going on to college, having a job that's going to pay well in the future, contributing to community, happy family life, and good health, right? And so it becomes important for us to continue to stay connected with and understand, how am I seeing things and where do I stand? Now, if we move on, and I guess before I move on, was there anything in that assessment that kind of jumped out for anybody? Always curious to see what you see, or if there's something that kind of stands out to you. You can either put it in the chat, or you can actually unmute and kind of share something that you saw, if you saw something that you want to share. All right, so I'll move on. So a couple things as far as keys to development. So a couple foundational pieces, a couple things that sometimes impact our ability to develop the mindset of hope and perseverance. The first one is that it's important for us to be mindful of negativity bias. Right? And so when I talk about negativity bias, it is the tendency to perceive and have a greater sensitivity to negative events over the positive ones. That it can lead to an inclination to recall and dwell on the negative. And so sometimes that bias kind of creeps into our mindset and we don't even realize it. And so my question then is, how can I tell if negativity bias has begun to creep into my mindset? So there are a couple questions that I really wanted to kind of share to kind of help us to kind of hone in and to recognize, am I thinking in negative ways that decreases my hope and then my perseverance, and then impacts the students that I interact with, excuse me, and teach on a regular basis or connect with on a regular basis, depending on what our role happens to be. So a couple questions that we sometimes need to stop and ask ourselves. Number one is, do you continuously relive the negative emotions you felt due to past unpleasant experiences? Right? So not to say that you never think about it, but is it something that you continuously do, reliving the negative over and over again? Second question, do you often dwell on past mistakes? Right? So do I make a mistake and then I keep thinking about that mistake over and over again? And sometimes it ends up being at the detriment of moving forward and doing things in a positive way in my future. Next question will be, does criticism hurt more than praise helps? And sometimes we get to that point where the things that people tell me that aren't exactly what I want to hear or areas of development, sometimes those things end up weighing more than when people give us praise and acknowledge what we do well. And then the last question is, do you get stuck focusing on negative news, right? I'll be honest, that's my own question, right? And so it is one of the things that kind of got me thinking about this particular topic, because sometimes we are inundated with information, news that begins to bring us down, and then we end up getting paralyzed, right? So just a few things to kind of think about as far as negativity, bias, and then the last one, are you increasingly less motivated to address problems or achieve goals? And so the problem ends up being is that when that negativity bias begins to kick in, I become less motivated to actually do something about it. And then it becomes this downward spiral where I'm more and more concerned about what's going on, but I'm less motivated to actually do anything about it. So we want to overcome negativity bias. And so just a couple of things as far as how do we overcome that negativity bias if I recognize that it's actually begun to creep into my thought process, right? So the first one is that it's important for us to challenge negative self-talk, that there are times in which, well, let me say it like this. As human beings, we talk to ourselves all day long. And whatever it is that I say to myself will sometimes impact how I feel and then what I do. And so it becomes important to challenge some of that negative self-talk. And by challenging it, I mean that sometimes we have to ask ourselves some questions in the moment that help me to reframe what it is that I'm thinking, right? And so that will be our second piece, reframing and refocusing. And so when I recognize that my thoughts are wholly negative, then I want to reframe and refocus by doing a few things, right? So the first one is to be able to shift from a passive mindset to an active oriented mindset, right? And so it's moving into that place where I think about what is it that I have the ability to do next time, as opposed to what I didn't do or what I wasn't able to affect or impact. The second way that I reframe and refocus is that I want to identify and build upon my strengths, as opposed to dwelling on what I don't do well. The third piece of reframing and refocusing has to do with acknowledging the past while embracing the future. I say that because when we talk about this idea of hope, we don't want to be at a place where I have unrealistic hope, which everything is always great. And if I think positively, everything's going to go the way that I want it to go. That's just not true. So it becomes important to acknowledge the past and acknowledge some of the challenges, but then at the same time, embrace the ability to move forward in a positive way. And then the last one, as far as reframing, is to maintain an internal locus of control, focusing on what I have the ability to control as opposed to what other people are and aren't doing. When I focus on what other people do, it leaves me at a place where I have no power to actually address it. So I need to focus internally on, all right, if this is the situation, what can I do? What do I have the ability to do to make it different? Number three, in overcoming negativity bias, is to create the habit of being purposeful to recall positive moments and experiences in our day. That I have found that as I go through days, it becomes so much easier to think about and remember all the things that are going wrong, as opposed to what it is that is going well. And so creating the habit that at the end of my day, just reflecting on what are some positive things that actually happened today to kind of bring some counterbalance to that negativity bias. Because while there are things that are going not the way that I want them to, there's still a number of things that are going well. So I need to focus on and be able to be mindful of those as well. And then the fourth thing that we want to do to overcome negativity bias is being mindful of what we often call hindering mental filters. And so when we talk about hindering mental filters, I'll just give you a couple examples of those, because our brain acts as a supercomputer. And there are certain things that we don't purposely think about so that we can make quick decisions and move on. But sometimes those quick decisions, those filters, come from a negative place. And so if we are thinking about how we overcome negativity bias, I have to really think about, and again, that mindset. What is it that's in my mindset that is either positive, or am I filtering information in a way that's negative, which then leads to a negative outcome? So the first one, just all or nothing thinking, where I think that everything is all right or it's all wrong and that there's nothing in between. Well, the problem with all or nothing thinking is that most often there isn't anything that tends to be all right or all wrong. There's often gray in between, other shades that kind of have me thinking about different perspectives, different things that contribute to the issue that I'm facing. And so I don't want to get into a place where it's all or nothing. I want to be able to see all the aspects so that I can move forward in a positive way. A second hindering mental filter is overgeneralization. When we overgeneralize, we tell people what they always do or what they never do. When we overgeneralize, we tend to put things into broad categories, and then we miss the details, which then hinder me from being able to identify what I actually have the ability to do and to address. The third hindering mental filter, discounting the positive, right? And so often when we talk about discounting the positive, let's say that we're working on a project together and we finish the project and we evaluate the project, how it went, and 95% of it went really well and went according to plan. The other 5% didn't work out too well. And so when we discount the positive, instead of being able to celebrate what we accomplished and then focus on how we make it better going forward, all we end up focusing on was what was wrong and what we didn't do well. All right. Fourth, I think I'm going to give you 5 this morning, should statements. So when we look at things, we should have done it like this, or we should have done it like that. And really, when I begin to talk to other people using should statements, what I'm really saying is you should have done it my way. And so we have to recognize that when we go back to evaluate, it's not just based on how I would have done it, but it's about being able to talk and recognize that there are other options, other things that we can actually do in order to move forward in a positive way. And then the final one would be personalization or blame. That when we begin to make things personal and blame other people, particularly for how I feel, it leaves us in a place where we don't have the power or ability to do anything about it. And that other person or that other thing or that other situation has complete control over me. And often what I found, particularly in this time frame, that there are certain people that are using fear, that are using this sense of helplessness in an effort to control people. And so as opposed to blaming and personalizing it and then giving someone else the control and the power over me, I have to recognize it for what it is and then determine what is it that I can do, what am I willing to do, and how do I move forward in what it is that I want to accomplish. Right. So as we now kind of define what hope and perseverance are, we kind of determined and understand how we are, where we stand as far as our own hope and our own perseverance. We have to be able to do that if we're going to actually teach it to our students, the skills and the mindset of perseverance and hope. So what does that actually look like in the classroom? So I want to just give you just a minute just to share a little bit with me some of your thoughts. What does hope and perseverance look like in the classroom? Okay. Any thoughts about what that looks like when students have a mindset of hope, or when they have that mindset of perseverance? What does that actually look like? I'm more than happy to give you a few things to look for. Okay, cool. So Liz says, asking questions. Absolutely. They try the task. Well, Alicia says they try the task that's presented. Sometimes it is that willingness to try, because when I don't have hope and when I'm not willing to persevere, sometimes I don't even begin to try. Trish says, they try again, right? And so we see people when they fail or it doesn't work the first time that they continue to do it. Alicia says to participate and engage in the conversation. Absolutely, where I feel like my voice is a positive thing, that my voice can contribute to what it is that we're doing and where we're trying to go. Lee says together the students have something positive to look forward to. Absolutely, it is the recognition that my future can be bright. Right. Alicia also shares a student trying a second time, right? And Seema says, I think for teachers, it looks like not giving up on a student who has a bad day. Without a doubt. I love all of those answers. I appreciate your feedback. A couple other things that it looks like. One is that it looks like an environment where students feel valued, supported, and encouraged to try to make some academic risks and try some new things. Right? It also looks like the ability to set goals. Goal setting is a major piece of hope and perseverance because it provides a purpose for what it is that I'm doing and how I'm going to actually get there. It looks like developing multiple strategies to achieve those goals that they create for themselves. Right? So when we talk about hope and perseverance, it's not about the goals that we set for students. It's about encouraging them and giving them the tools and the skills to set goals for themselves and developing multiple strategies in order to get there. Because as we said earlier, just because I have a plan, it doesn't always work the way that I planned it out. It also looks like reflecting and identifying what is important. So in other words, identifying my own personal values, and my personal values then dictate the actions that I take. So when I know what's important to me, then it also helps me to be able to determine what I'm willing to do and put in the effort to get there. It also looks like seeing setbacks as opportunities. And so when I make a mistake or when things don't go the way that I wanted them to, as opposed to having that fixed mindset where I say, well, I'm kind of stuck with this. It is what it is. I can only do what I can do. Having that growth mindset that says that a mistake is an opportunity to learn and to do something differently and do it better. It also looks like in the classroom being able to celebrate effort, progress, and achievement. And I think what ends up happening sometimes is that sometimes we only celebrate when we achieve the goal. But if I'm going to develop hope and perseverance, it starts with praising the effort and celebrating the effort. Because if I didn't try, it's definitive that I'm not going to achieve it. But it's also celebrating the progress because I may not have gotten to where I want to be, but I'm further along than where I started. And then we finally get to the point of achievement. So being able to help students to recognize that there's a continuum of effort that leads to where we want to be, which also helps to develop the perseverance that we're looking for. Final pieces are just stronger social skills. So we recognize that our social skills, the ability to connect with other people, to build, let's call it social capital, right? Where the relationships that we have help each other to move forward in a positive way, and then building deeper and meaningful relationships where we're not just connecting, where we don't have just acquaintances where we know of each other, but actually truly getting to know each other, having meaningful relationships that help us to be supportive of each other in this journey. And then the final piece will be just a willingness to ask for help and support rather than giving up. And we see often that asking for help is not always an easy thing for people to do, whether they're students or even for us as adults. Asking for help is sometimes difficult, and sometimes people are more willing to give up than to ask for help because it feels like, oh, I just don't know what I'm doing, or I'm less than. And so we want to be able to create those relationships that allow me to open up and be transparent about things that we struggle with so that we can be supportive of each other in that process. Now, finally, I just want to move on to some best practices, right? So when I think about best practices, there are certain things that we can do in order to be able to develop that mindset of hope and perseverance, some things that we've already talked about. So I'll just reiterate a couple of those, and then a couple that I'm going to add to this list that we can talk about. I want to just start off by saying that when it comes to best practices, um, Dr. Elias says that the social decision making and social problem solving curriculum emphasize the development of both. And they are definitely essential life skills, and having the ability to teach it in schools, I definitely co-sign with that, students are, when they are empowered to develop those skills of problem solving, being able to think critically for themselves, it empowers them to be able to do these things, and we have to be purposeful to teach them. Right. So when we talk about best practices, they tend to fall into 4 focus areas. So one is relationships. So we've kind of talked a little bit about that. So as we're developing this mindset of hope and perseverance, a major piece of it is based on the relationships that we develop. Second focus area would be safe and equitable and stable environments. Right? That it is difficult to have hope and perseverance when a student moves into a place or a climate where it feels unsafe, where things are not equitable, or when things are topsy-turvy, upside down constantly. A third focus area for best practices so that we want to focus on social and civic engagement. That belonging and connectedness are major pieces that will help students to be able to take some of those risks that we talked about earlier, academic, social, to be able to recognize that their voice is important, that their voice counts for something. And also that their lives, there are things in their lives that are bigger than themselves. And then finally, emotional growth. Right. So being able to develop those skills that allow them to grow emotionally, which also allow them to be able to be more successful. So as we look at, as we get ready to wrap this up, we talk about some best practices. I want to start off with some best practices for ourselves, right? Because we said earlier, it starts with ourselves. And if I am not mindful of where I am, then sometimes it makes it difficult to support our students to be able to help them to move forward into this mindset of hope and perseverance as well. Now, some of the things that we talk about for ourselves are things that we can also teach students as well. But I want to focus from that perspective of starts with me, and then it becomes about we. All right. As we think about a couple of best practices, one is that, again, fostering that growth mindset, right, where mistakes are learning opportunities, where we have the ability to recognize that I can grow, that I'm not stagnant, that I have the ability to take on and do better and move forward in that particular way. The second one is to reflect upon and talk about mistakes and use them as learning opportunities. And I say reflect upon and then talk about. Sometimes we reflect upon the mistakes, but we don't talk with other people to kind of brainstorm, well, how can I do something differently going forward? So being able to have someone that I can talk to, because sometimes I feel a certain way, and until I talk about it, I feel like it's only me that feels the way that I do. And most often we recognize that that's just not true. We often have similar feelings, and if we talked about them, we could support each other. It's also important to embrace uncertainty. We know that right now, from day to day, we don't know what's about to happen next, right? And so being able to embrace that uncertainty, but also recognize and identify what it is that I have the ability to do, even when I don't know what's coming down the pipe. Next one would just be to balance perseverance and self-care, right? So when we talk about perseverance, if I have perseverance, when I continue to try, when I put forth the effort, when I don't give up, but I don't have self-care, it leads to burnout. But if I have self-care, when I'm constantly taking care of myself and making sure that I get my rest and I recognize my limitations. If I have self-care, but I don't have perseverance, it leads to a lack of progress. So we want to balance both of those things so that I don't burn myself out, but so that I keep moving forward. Another thing for ourselves is just to incorporate some downtime in our schedule. I found that for me, I believe that there are times where I overschedule myself, where there's so many things going on, and I need to do this and I need to do that. Sometimes I don't even have well, I won't say I don't have the ability. I just don't say no sometimes. And so, in the same way that we schedule all these meetings and things that we need to do, we also have to schedule some downtime in our schedule so that we can take care of ourselves and not burn ourselves out. Developing goal setting skills, like we said earlier, setting goals just provides a purpose and direction and something to work toward. We also want to, again, monitor and question our self-talk and reframe some of those negative thoughts. Last couple is just practicing gratitude, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And the research says that when I take the time to write down maybe 3 things that I'm grateful for in a day, that it helps to reduce stress and anxiety for 1 month, 3 months, and for a 6-month period. And so it becomes important to practice gratitude and also to avoid comparing ourselves to other people, because then we begin to stress out because I'm not like them, or they're doing this and I'm not doing it. There are certain strengths that I have that other people don't. There's certain things I want to develop that other people are good at that I may not be yet. And so again, that growth mindset is the power of yet. So I don't want to continuously compare myself to other people. I want to identify what I do well and then begin to think about what I want to work on and develop that without comparing myself to others. And then finally, just using humor to cope. Right? Sometimes we have to laugh to keep from crying, but the truth is that it becomes important to be able to laugh, to be able to recognize that while this is challenging and difficult, I have the ability to kind of laugh about certain things and be able to move forward. So these are things for ourselves, but also some things that we could also use and teach with our students. And then some things that are student specific as far as how we can be supportive of them. And then we are all set, right? First one is just to allow students to work through their struggles with challenges. Sometimes we are so quick to jump in and to help somebody without giving them a chance to try to work through. That perseverance comes from, it's kind of similar to how we build muscle, right? You don't build muscle by picking up a weight once and then putting it down and now I'm buff and built, right? That it takes strain and it takes some struggle where I have to build the muscle, so that tension is what helps us to build the ability. So we don't want to stop students and keep them from struggling. We want to allow them to work through their struggles, but giving them the tools to do so. The second piece would be to create opportunities for students to work together towards a goal that's bigger than themselves as individuals, right? That we recognize that there are things in our lives that are bigger than myself, and that it takes all of us working cooperatively together in order to get there. Again, practicing goal setting, patience, and delayed gratification. I know that we live in this microwave mentality where everything is instantaneous, but we have to be able to build the ability to set goals, to be patient as we go, and to delay gratification if we're going to build perseverance for our students. Next one will be to teach the skill of monitoring and questioning our self-talk, right? And reframing those negative thoughts. It's also important for us to provide feedback, providing positive feedback so that students can see the things that they do well so they can build upon them. Last few, modeling that mindset of hope and perseverance, that often students will see what we do a lot quicker than hearing what we tell them if they don't match. And so if we want to help them to develop it, we have to give it and show it ourselves. Last few is to develop some self-awareness. So helping students to become more self-aware of themselves, to be able to recognize how they're feeling, what some of their triggers are, and to recognize that they have the ability to deal with them and to cope and move through them. Last two, celebrate effort and outcomes, which we talked about, and then being solution-oriented and encouraging them to seek help. And then finally, to build strong social connections and share stories. And that's where I'll kind of leave it for us, that sharing stories is something that we probably could do more of. That as we begin to talk about Here's what my challenge was. This is how I felt. This is what I did to overcome it. That the more we share stories with each other, the more that hope and perseverance become real and seem possible. Sometimes our students look at us like we've never gone through anything, or we've never been challenged by anything, or sometimes students to students feel the same way. But the more that we talk to each other, the more that we share those stories, the more that hope and perseverance, excuse me, become a reality. And so, last thing that I wanted to share with you, and then we'll kind of leave it there, that perseverance, sometimes it becomes purposeful or important for us to purposefully reflect upon perseverance. And so, a reflection that I often use with students, just a few 5 questions, right? What are some things that you've already done that took perseverance, to help them to recognize that they've already used perseverance in their lives? It's not something that I have to pull from nothing. It's something that I've already done. The second question, what did you need to do to persevere and achieve success? So when they think back upon it, to recognize that there are things that they actually have done that they can continue to do or emulate as they move forward. The third one, who is a role model of perseverance for you, and why is that person a role model? The fourth one, discuss a time that you quit and you regretted it. Right? Because we've all been at that point at one time or another that we just gave up. And then later on, we were impacted by it. And so, kind of thinking about it, to recognize that there are some negative consequences to just giving up. And then the final one is, why is perseverance important in our society today? Right? To make it relevant to what it is that we're doing, to recognize that things don't always go the way that we want to. But now, even in a time such as this, it becomes even more important to persevere and to hold on to our hope, because when we give it up and when we let it go, we lose control of who we are and what we have the ability to contribute. Right. So that is, I think, my time. Yeah, I am actually 3 minutes beyond my time, but I appreciate all of your participation. I didn't know if there were any questions. I'm more than happy to answer those, and then I'll pass it back to Liz.
While we're waiting for questions, Patrick, oh yeah, people are saying very insightful. Thanks so much for sharing, and would just like to echo that. What an important message for all of us. And when you were reading through the best practices for students, I just thought, wow, I would love to be in that classroom, and it would just feel so energizing and fun. And there's that great feeling you get when you try something that's hard and you kind of figure it out, or you almost figure it out. I mean, that's joy. And just thinking that this is, your whole presentation was just full of such practical tips and just fabulous reminders of, just how these are skills and we have to work on it. So, and because we are living in ambiguous times, it's so important that we manage all of that, right? And that we're very intentional about how are we feeling, and the modeling as well, so we as adults make a huge difference. So Patrick, that was just marvelous. So any quick questions? We are going to have to shut this down in about a minute, 90 seconds, but just want to make sure people have a chance to ask questions. I think people just loved it. It's sounding like, so of course they did.
Well, I appreciate all the feedback, the positive feedback. Yeah, thank you so much. We're in this together.
We certainly are. And it feels good to be together. It's like, especially, it's like that the whole, what you shared about, just giving people a chance to collaborate, practice, work on something bigger together. That's community, and we need that.
Yeah.
All right. Maurice Celeste says he has a whole page of notes. Fabulous. I do too, but mine aren't terribly legible. I have a writing issue. So in any case, I'm going to stop the recording.